Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Monday. And if you went out of your way to like, comment, or subscribe, thank you. All right, so the biggest difference between cranking now and in the colder months is the speed of your retrieve. So in the colder months, it just seems like if you can get a bait in front of the fish and you wind it slow, they're gonna bite it. And as we get into the hotter months, it's the opposite. If you get it in front of their face and you're not winding it fast enough, you're not gonna bite it. Now, the downside of that is the baits that you catch them on in the springtime when you're winding them slow and they're getting into 1.5 to 2.5 feet of water. When they are wound fast, they're gonna be in 4 to 5 feet of water. So those popular square bills like a Strike King 1.5, a Lucky Craft 1.5, a bunch of companies make that style square bill. It just doesn't work in 2 feet of water anymore. So there are a couple crankbaits that I really like to throw in dirt shallow water in the summertime, and there's a couple different scenarios that happen on most lakes. Doesn't matter if it's a river or a natural lake or a flooded impoundment, they all have some type of fish that is going to get in 2 feet of water. So there are scenarios where flipping and throwing other baits just aren't going to cut it, and you really do need some type of moving reaction bait, and a crankbait is that for me, because there are days where they just won't bite top water and you really need something that you can move and fish fast, because these bass aren't going to be everywhere, but when you do find them, they typically are piled up. So this is a Strike King Series 1, very similar to a Bandit 100. Couldn't tell you which one came first, but this is a staple square bill crankbait that you don't see a whole lot of because we just don't have big tournaments in the summer on these southern fisheries. Most of our big tournaments are fishing for smallmouth this time of year, so you don't get to see a lot of the techniques that work really well on flatter lakes in the summertime. This is one of those baits, like the Bandit 100, where the bill just isn't as steep as it is on a 1.5, so it doesn't dig like it does on those other square bills. It's going to keep that bait up a little bit shallower. So you can burn this bait and it'll stay in 2 feet of water. Now, this is a great bait for a lot of different summertime scenarios. So the first one coming to mind is any time that you have some runoff. Now, steeper lakes are going to have more runoff than the flatter lakes, but you will also see a lot of lakes have runoff when anytime there's rain. You know, you're going to have a lot of silt around those places. So if you have a bait that's going to dive down and dig into the bottom, it's going to be covered in silt. If you want to put a crankbait in front of those bass without getting it covered in silt, this is the perfect scenario. You're going to have a little bit of a path there where the bass are going to stack up, and you can get this bait to go right through there. And again, most of those, when you don't have a ton of runoff, are going to be in like 1.5 feet of water, but bass will be there. And there's a lot of different scenarios where their current related bass will hang out. So if you have current on your lake, most of the current is going to be pushing up against shallow banks. So if you have water willow or just sandbars on your lake, you can't get them to bite top water. This is a great bait to just fish around. You know, fish are going to use that water willow, and then they're going to pull out and feed. They're going to get back in the water willow. They're going to keep going back and forth all day. So if you can't get them to bite a flipping bait in the water willow, pull out and throw a square bill. The downside of most square bills, they're going to dig into that muck and all that other stuff that's around that grass. So you throw a little shallower running crankbait. It's very, very important this time of year. Now, you also have flooded lakes where you may have like a forest that was flooded. You're going to have a lot of decaying wood, and you may have a bunch of wood that is in the perfect depth range. So if you have a bunch of wood that's in 2 feet of water, and I'm talking a bunch of it, like a whole flat covered with wood, it would take you all day to flip it. You could go in there with this Series 1, burn it around that wood, fish fast, and you could cover the whole area. So a lot of these times, these areas are going to be dead. You know, most of the area is going to be dead. You might find one little pod of fish in there and it could be loaded, but if you spend your whole day covering a big flat where you really don't know if there's anything there, you may waste your entire day. So this is a great bait to go in there, cover as much water as you possibly can. You also will see this not just in flooded impoundments, but rivers where wood is being washed up on flats. It's the same scenario. You may have a bunch of wood, too shallow to flip. You know, it's not deep enough where you can pitch a drop shot or something to it, and you want to cover it quickly. Same thing, crankbait. And these areas typically get a lot of fishing pressure because they're the most fishable, best looking places on your river. So You come around a river bend and there's a big flat covered in wood. Well, everyone's going to go and throw a buzzbait on it. Everyone's going to go and throw a spook on it. So you can't always catch those fish on topwater. Sometimes you've got to go down there, really cover each piece, crank around them. In a Series 1 is a great bait for that. So this is one of those crankbaits. If you need something to burn, but you don't want it to go deeper than 2 feet, try a Striking Series 1 or a Bandit 100. You don't hear much about them, but they are awesome crankbaits. They've won a lot of tournaments. Try those. Good luck to you guys, and I'll see you on the water.